Okay, you're live.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the December 17th, 2020 Planning Board meeting. We have full attendance from our board members, so welcome to the public and thank you for the staff and consultants and the applicants dialing in on this snowy evening. So we do have a quorum, but before I get to the agenda, let me read the statement that we've been opening every meeting with, that tonight's meeting and work session is being convened in accordance with the governor's executive order number 202.1, issued March 13th, 2020, which suspends certain provisions of the New York State Open Meetings Law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view tonight's meeting, and a transcript will be provided at a later date. I have also confirmed with our village clerk that this meeting has been duly noticed by posting a notice on the village's bulletin boards, faxing a copy to the Warner Library, faxing a copy to the Journal News and the Hudson Independent newspapers, posting a copy on the village's website, and listing it on the village's Facebook page. So with that, I think we can quickly go through the agenda for this evening. First is GTY New York Leasing Inc. at 215 North Broadway, amended site plan. Second is Ivan and Sonia Lukusik at 143 Weber Avenue, a proposed subdivision preliminary plat. Third up is Stevens and Kent House LLC. It's a final subdivision plat approval at County House Road and Bedford Road. Fourth is Hudson Valley Writers Center at the Phillips Manor Railroad Station. It's proposed subdivision final plat, some administrative work to clean up prior application. And then there's a Connor and Elizabeth Ginley with a proposed single family residence. It's their preliminary presentation at 5 Evergreen Way. Then we have a public hearing by Sleepy Hollow Associates LLC for a change of use at 4549 Beekman Avenue. And then we have Edge on Hudson Riverfront Development, draft resolution now that they've gotten their zoning board approvals for phase 3 preliminary subdivision plat and block OP for a partial site plan approval. And then the first public hearing for the block A proposed retail space site plan approval. So that's the agenda for this evening. So the first item, the GTY New York leasing, I move to open the public hearing. Can I get a second? Kirsten has seconded it, and all in favor. Lindsay?
Aye.
Tom? Aaron?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Okay, so the only member of our planning board who's not present tonight is Matthew Brennan. All the other members are here on the Zoom. So the public hearing is open, and is it Ms. Pallotti who's speaking on behalf of this application?
Did you open GTY lease it?
Yes.
No,
That's 215. Yeah, Kristen, I think is
I'm at agenda item 4.
4, right?
Oh, okay. So who's speaking for 215?
I don't believe anyone's here, are they? I thought that Sean said that they did not get their plans ready for the zoning board.
That's correct.
Right, but they came back before us last month, or even though they hadn't
Yeah.
gone before the ZBA either, so I wasn't sure if someone was showing up tonight.
And no, I don't see anybody here to represent. Yes.
Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment on this application?
I don't see anybody.
Okay, so procedurally, this is, pretty straightforward, right? They have a request to change some signage. We're referring them to the zoning board. 2 months now, they haven't gone before the zoning board. So do we just adjourn and let it carry forth to January, or, I'm not sure.
You have a fairly broad range of options. You can simply adjourn it to January, to February, to whenever. You can adjourn it and write a letter to the applicant saying you're adjourned to January. It's fish or cut bait in January. We will dismiss it if you don't appear. You can write them threatening dismissal, or you can simply dismiss it. I think two missed opportunities is not a sufficient basis for dismissal. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but certainly if you're impatient, there's no reason not to write them and tell them that you're ready to move on. They need to make a zoning application and come back to see you.
Well, I am impatient on a personal level, but that aside, I'm not sure what the confusion in terms of them progressing is. I think David on both calls clarified for them how to proceed. So maybe to move things along and to give them, very specific direction, we should follow up with a letter and tell them, fish or cut bait, which is, as you described, option 2.
Yes.
Is that-
move that we do that.
Okay. I think what we do is we move to adjourn, send the applicant a very specific letter, and then move this to January 21st, 2021.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor? Ed,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Okay, so that is how we'll proceed. Who should write that letter?
We'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Okay. So next is 143 Weber Avenue, the proposed subdivision. So I move to reopen the public hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
Lindsay has seconded it. Kirsten,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Okay, so the public hearing is open. Do we have the applicant on tonight?
The applicant is not present.
Okay, any members of the public wishing to speak on this 143 Weber Avenue subdivision?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, this in contrast with the GTY New York seems a lot more complicated in terms of the zoning and wetlands and a variety of things that need to be resolved. Does anyone know the status of their application? Are they working on stuff? James, have you conversed with them or their engineer?
I've spoken with their engineer. I think they're having trouble getting their soil scientist out there to flag the wetlands. That's one of the issues. They've also shared with me some revised drainage plans, which look fine for a subdivision. They've done more than enough to get to the next stage, and we could look at the drainage a little bit more in detail when the site plans come around. But for right now, everything looks good on that. All I'm waiting for is the wetlands. So I think they're being held up by their sub.
Okay. So it seems appropriate then to adjourn until January 21st, 2021. So I move that we adjourn until January 21st, 24th. Okay, Ed has seconded it. Lindsay,
Aye.
Kirsten,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Okay, adjourn till next year. The next is the Stevens and Kent House LLC, and their attorney has sent a letter to Sean stating that the final plat requires some minor adjustments. So due to this change, they're requesting to be pushed to a later presentation. So we'll expect to see them next year as well. So the number 4 on the agenda is the Hudson Valley Writer Center, the proposed subdivision final plat at 300 Riverside Drive. And Kristen Pallotti is on for this discussion, and anybody else?
Donald Stever is also here. He's the second Kristen R. Pallotti listed.
Okay, so hello, Mr. Stever incognito. All right.
All right. Good evening. My name is Kristen Pallotti. I'm from Marks v. Palermo, representing the Hudson Valley Writers Center in relation to their subdivision application for 300 Riverside Drive, the Phillips Manor Railroad Station. As discussed in the work session, we are requesting the reapproval of the 1995 subdivision that was approved by this board. As Mr. McCarthy stated, the subdivision plat was not properly filed with Westchester County at that time and is now stale. So at this time, we were requesting the reapproval of the subdivision, subject to very minor immaterial changes to the lot line, just based on the negotiations going on between the Writer Center and the MTA. But it is it is the same subdivision as previously requested. The Writer Center acquired this property in 1993 from Penn Central, and it's subject to a 275-year lease that MTA holds. So we're requesting this at this time because the MTA has agreed to quit claim its leasehold interest in 300 Riverside Drive, giving the Writer Center fee absolute interest, title interest in the property. And we are working with Ward Carpenter to submit the final plat plan to the building department. So we are requesting the reapproval conditioned upon the final plat plan that is not substantially altered from the prior subdivision approved by this board.
Okay. So the, how do we handle this procedurally, Clinton? You're muted.
I'm sorry. You need to have the final plat before you, so you can act tonight. I'm assuming, Ms. Pallotti, would you expect to have it by January?
Yes, we definitely can have it by the January meeting. We were hoping for the approval conditioned upon the plat being produced to the building department.
Whether we can do that or not, I don't know. What were the minor revisions that you said were immaterial? Did they involve the boundaries of the plot or?
So
Clinton, this is Don Stever. Let me jump in here for a minute. Okay. The northwest corner of the property has a minor adjustment to make it clear that the Writers Center will not own a little tiny piece that is hanging over the platform, the active platform. The second change is about a 3-foot change, moving the northwestern, not the northwestern, the boundary that runs along the stairs that come up from the platform, the northbound platform, and the stairs to the pedestrian overpass. It moves that lot line about 3 or 4 feet so that it is outside of the overhang of the roof of the 2 Metro North or pedestrian areas, which those roofs were built after the original deed was granted in 1993 or 94. So we're talking about a few feet one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that I would prefer, considering the age, considering that only Ed McCarthy was familiar with it, I think I would prefer to wait until January. I don't anticipate any problem in January, but I would prefer to wait.
Let me just throw in one other thing here, and that is that we're also in negotiation to buy out the MTA's interest, and we have a long-term lease with the MTA that expires on December 31st. And after December 31st, the Writers Center is going to incur not insubstantial rent penalties as a holdover tenant. And so the quicker we can get this done and close the deal with the MTA, the better we are in terms of the Ryder Center's financial dealings with the MTA, which, as you probably know, is a difficult bureaucracy to deal with.
Sean or David, do you know what is it required that the board have the final plat before it?
Yes.
It is?
Yes, and I think the issue is if the final plat is in conformance with the preliminary plat, you don't need to hold a public hearing. The planning board can by resolution adopt the final plat.
But
I'm looking at the procedure right now in the code, and that's what it calls for is it shall be considered officially submitted only at the regular meeting of the planning board. That's submission of the final subdivision plat, and then the planning board needs to have a resolution adopting the final plat.
so we can't act tonight. We cannot act tonight.
Ms. Pallotti, when did you become aware that the final plat had not been submitted to the state?
That was before my dealings on this. The 1995 plat.
The final plat was not, did not have to be submitted to the state. It would have been filed with the county.
The county.
At the county or whatever, but when did you become aware that this last piece of administrative task had not been cared for?
Well, probably last summer, or I think early in the fall.
Was there some reason that you were waiting until the same month that your lease is expiring?
Unfortunately, we were dealing with the MTA and did not have essentially a deal in place until late last spring, even though we've been trying to deal with the MTA for about 5 or more years. The problem with getting the subdivision plat done, frankly, and Kristen is dealing with the surveyor. I mean, we have been after Ward Carpenter to get this survey done for months, and they just didn't get it done.
Yes, it had taken quite a while just to get the survey. So at this time, we're still waiting on the final plat.
All right, well, all rather unfortunate set of circumstances, but it sounds like we as a planning board don't have the leeway to, approve the plat, and a resolution does need to be written. So unfortunately, it appears we need to see you again on January 21st.
Okay.
But Chair Shu, I will take it that we are instructed to prepare a resolution for the 21st as well.
Yes.
Don, a quick question. Your discussions with MTA, is there anything that the board could provide, let's say, in the way that they're familiar with the application and they expect to have the final plat approved at the January meeting? Does that help, having some kind of a statement from the planning board in your discussions with?
David, I don't think it wouldn't hurt. The problem with the MTA is that it is a large and very intractable bureaucracy.
No.
But anything like that would probably be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Madam Chair, perhaps just, a the board could pass a quick resolution that they're in support of the application and awaiting the final plat, but you're in support of the final plat once it gets formally submitted, something along those lines. And we could provide that to the Hudson Valley Writers Center.
Yeah, we're all very supportive of having the Writer Center in our community. So whatever we can do to facilitate the negotiations, happy to do that. So is that just a written resolution, or do we state something this evening?
Then could they state something like that, kind of in general terms, and then either you or I or Sean could formalize something and then have it provided to Don and to Kristen for their use?
That would be fine. I would move that or suggest a motion that due to circumstances beyond the applicant's control, the final plat was not available for the meeting tonight. The planning board and its presentation was a requirement for approval. Nonetheless, the planning board supports the Writers Center and anticipates approval of the plat when it is submitted. Would that suffice, Don and Ms. Pallotti, or?
Oh, no, that Clinton, that would be very helpful. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So move that we anticipate at the January 21st, 2021 meeting to review the final plat and approve and a resolution in support of the Hudson Valley Writers Center establishing this subdivision. Anything? Did I miss anything?
No.
Can I get a second? Kristen, a second. Okay. Thomas? Aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Okay, so the resolution is passed, and we'll get you something in writing to help with your MTA negotiations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome. Good night. Okay, Connor and Elizabeth Ginley are next on the agenda. Okay, who is presenting on their behalf? I see Mr. Ginley is on.
Good evening, board. I believe Mike Dobler is also on.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Dobler.
No, I'm Ralph Mastromonaco.
Wow, everyone's going by these different pseudonyms tonight.
Okay, well, thank you for not canceling your meeting tonight. I know that the Ginleys are anxious to move into their new home. On December 2nd, we provided the board with a complete, as we feel, complete application, architectural plan, site plan, drainage reports, and we did receive some comments from James Natarelli. We're proposing a 4-bedroom house. If it's completely zoning compliant. There are some trees that need to come down. We have a landscape plan. We did get some comments on that, to use native species, which we're willing to look at. And I was listening in on the work session about the trees in the backyard. We had some conversations with Mr. Ginley, Connor. And I think it was his concern that the trees being higher up from the house did pose some sort of a threat. This was his call that he thought those trees should come down. I believe that if there's excessive concern about that, we can take another look at that. I don't know if he's complete. I think we would at least like to leave that at the moment as a possibility. And I can take another look at that tree issue in the next month or so, well, before the next planning board meeting, rather. Other than that, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward application, I believe. If there's any comments or questions, I can answer them.
What is the concern relative to the trees, the mature trees?
Well, the trees are uphill of the house, and you do need to take some of those trees down really to create a yard. The property is 15,000 square feet. It's not quite 4/10 of an acre. And the purpose, I believe, to take some of those trees down in the rear yard was to really give a rear yard for the house. But secondly, there was some concern about safety. The trees are above the house, elevation wise. And if they ever were to come down, they would fall towards the house. So, but as I said, this is something that, if there's a great deal of concern about one or two of those trees, we can certainly take another look at it.
It may make sense to have an arborist look at those trees to determine if those are going to endanger the home at a, in the near term. Obviously things happen, but is there something to suggest that those trees are, other than being uphill, unhealthy?
Well, we don't know it's precisely what that is. I do have a concern that, just as your previous application, getting other people out there to take a look at your property is a very difficult thing to plan on. And I'm not sure that any arborist is going to guarantee a tree isn't going to fall down. But I would like to take a look personally and see if there's any specific issue with those trees.
Okay. So any other comments from the planning board or our consultants?
Sure,
If not,
I just wanted to say that I spoke to Michael Dobler, who's one of the designers who works for Ralph, and we talked about the application, and the drainage system appears to look good. We talked about doing some test pits that could be witnessed by the village prior to building permit issuance. That's something that I think would be okay to add as a condition to any future resolution. I also had included a comment at the end of the memo about checking in with DPW about the capacity of the system that the engineers are proposing to tie into. And DPW said that there were no concerns about the capacity there, so that looked okay too. And I'm confident that any other of the comments from the memo can be resolved prior to the next meeting.
okay, great. Thanks, James. And are you prepared, Mr. Mastro Monaco, to present before the January 21st meeting?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So why don't we schedule a public hearing for you then?
Thank you very much.
I just have one question of clarification, whether the applicant has submitted an application to the tree commission for the trees they're proposing to remove. And if they haven't, do they need to do that?
I don't remember. But I'll check the file, but if we didn't, we'll do that right away.
And I do appreciate you addressing the comments I made in the work session. Just for the record of these meeting minutes, the trees I had commented on the work session were specifically the 5 trees in the backyard. And of those, the 3 oaks that are of larger diameter, 20 inches and above.
I heard you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Any other comments? All right, we'll see you in the new year then.
Okay, thank you very much. So long.
I believe you need to have a motion.
Oh, okay. Kirsten,
I'll move to that we set a public hearing for this project in January.
okay, can I get a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Ed, aye.
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Marjorie, aye. So see you in 2021.
All right. Good night, Clinton,
Good night, Ralph. Good to see you again.
and David, and James.
See you, Ralph.
So long now.
Bye.
Okay, next is Sleepy Hollow Associates, 4549 Beekman Ave, change of use. And I see Mr. Adler, Mr. McGovern, and Mr. Mooney are on.
Evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's Kyle McGovern. And yes, with me tonight is the project architect, David Mooney, and the principal, the developer, Philip Adler. We were last before the board last month, and we presented the project, and the board had referred us out to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we were before the Zoning Board of Appeals last evening. And we're happy to report that we did receive unanimous approval on our 4 variances that we're required to receive. The parking variance, the loading zone variance. We were also received a variance for the landscape buffer. That there was a condition to that variance that we work with the building department regarding the fencing along the rear of the parking lot that runs adjacent to the multi-family apartment building behind, committing to a fence with screening. There was talk about a 6-foot height, and maybe go a little lower as you get closer to Washington Street for the view, for the sight lines when the car is coming in and out of the parking lot. But again, I believe that was the discretion was left to the building department, which we are fully on board with. And finally, we received approval on our variance for the residential component on the first floor, on that first story, the rear part of the bank building. So we are back before this board. I know that Mr. Mooney there was questions and comments raised by the village engineer and the village planner that Mr. Mooney addressed in writing, and I certainly would want to turn it over to him as well to address those issues and any questions that the board have. And of course, I'm available as well.
Okay, Mr. Mooney, would
Yes.
you?
Let me just share my screen. Okay. So we had some comments from the village engineer and the planner. The village engineer had brought up the drainage issues on the site. And I think in the first report that came out, there was a area drain right in this area, and then a trench drain right across this section of access road onto Beekman. And both of those structures are completely full and with debris over years. We also located out in the site 2 other drainage areas, one here and one here on the site, which I spoke to James Nottarelli about. I went back out and verified they were there. So our plan is to clean out all 4 of these structures, find out exactly how they're designed and how they're functioning, and then work with the village engineer on the best method to increase the viability of the drainage on site. It's possible that these 2 yard drains in the center are connected to dry wells, but we don't know at this time. So we're hoping that once we get out and clean these structures out, we'll have a better handle on how they were originally designed and what we can do to improve the drainage system. That basically was the village engineer's main issue, was the drainage. As far as the planning advisor comments were, they were site lighting. There's currently 2 pole lights in this area, and then 2 in this area on the side of the post office building, which is 45. Our plan is to relamp the 4 light fixtures with LED luminaires and put them on photocells and see how they operate and make sure that there's no glare or light leaving the site. If at that time there is an issue, we would be happy to change the fixtures on the poles. One of the other issues that was brought up from a planning perspective was we were putting our recycling containers out in this area here. And that was basically because at least from the residential standpoint, the recycling is picked up on the sidewalk in this area. So it provided a spot where if tenants want to take their recycling down ahead of time, they could store it there. If not, they could also bring it down for the day of pickup and put the bins out through here. So that was the reason why we picked this location. For the trash, we picked a location back in here, which would allow the municipal system to come in and pick up the trash, which is twice a week through there. One other issue that the village engineer had was the condition of the sidewalk on North Washington through here. And there's clearly areas where the sidewalk is in need of repair. There's areas where we're going to excavate and make changes to the entryway to these 2 residential units off North Washington that are currently where the walk-up bank tellers used to be. So we're looking to repair these sidewalks to provide safe access to it. And we're happy to discuss with the village whatever their plan is for the Beekman Avenue sidewalk restoration program, whether there's any way we can kind of tie in a little bit to that. So those were basically the comments that the planning advisor had and the village engineer. And, you know, we think we've addressed those satisfactorily.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, and I know our board members had a number of comments, which you probably overheard on the work session.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I did hear the work session. I know one of the requests was regarding the county planning board's referral review that mentioned affordable housing. And again, this project, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the rents will be market rate rents. We're not looking to have an affordable housing component to this. It just doesn't fit within the business plan. And again, it's going to be market value. Basically, when the apartments are ready, it'll be set at market value. There's single bedroom, there's 1 2-bedroom, but basically one-bedroom units that they're looking to rent at market value when and if it's built.
Kyle, but to clarify, the rents, even though they're market rate, they probably would fall within, an affordable component. You're just not encumbering the project with any type of restriction on the rentals, the rental rate.
Yeah, David, that's correct. Yeah, exactly. There's it's basically what is the affordable market at the time. But yeah, you're correct. We're not tying any sort of income-based rent values.
So based on your business plan, Mr. McGovern, kind of what are the ranges of rents that you think you're going to be renting these units for?
I'm not 100% certain about what the market value is for single bedrooms in Sleepy Hollow at this point. I wouldn't even want to speculate on what those numbers are, but basically it's, really when these are constructed and ready to go, what a single bedroom apartment would go for in that particular area in Sleepy Hollow. As well, again,
I'm sure
I wasn't involved in the market. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Mr. Adler, wouldn't he have some idea? He's the developer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I only asked because you brought up the business plan. So as you're developing a business plan, presumably you've got some estimates at least of what the cash flow and the costs are to make it something that you want to proceed with, right?
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Kyle, you're probably happy. Madam Chair, we looked at rents that probably started around $1,700 or $1,800 and went to about $2,700, $2,750. We're not exactly sure. Nobody knows till you hit the market.
Right.
We're going to look at the finishes. I mean, these are not going to be. They're going to be nice. They're going to be pleasant, but we're not planning on doing $40,000 kitchens with stainless steel appliances. From my perspective, we're targeting an affordable market rate housing unit. We're not trying to do luxury units. I think that there's more than enough luxury units coming to market in town. So I think that there's a significant unmet need between the ETPA controlled units in the community and the new market rate stuff. And that's the window that we'd like to be in. Although I do not want to be subject to a rent regulation of any kind.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, that's exactly, I was just looking for kind of a ballpark. So to get a feel for it.
Great.
I did have one question related to the Westchester County Planning Board referral letter. Comment number 5 mentions a recommendation for bicycle parking. Given your tenant mix and given the location to trails and train station and the bridge, what sort of is that something that you are willing to consider as part of your in the parking plan or within the interior or in the back of the back of the site?
I think the plan was to use the lower level of both 47 and 49 for storage for tenants for bicycles and items that they can't fit into their units. So the idea was if you had a bicycle, you could definitely store it on that lower level, the basement level, which both 47 and 49 have access to the parking lot to those lower levels. So that people who had bicycles, whether they wanted to use them to commute with or just use them for recreation on the weekends, would be able to store them on site.
Okay, so those would be below level and with a staircase that you'd have to move your bicycle up and down.
The property in the back slopes down. You can access the lower level from the outside, so you don't have to go into the building to go down into the basements. So that would be an area where people could store bicycles.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I'd just like to put on record that that the Village of Sleepy Hollow does have a complete streets and complete sustainable streets policy, and that it would be wonderful to, again, work closely with the village to tie in with any of the streetscape improvements on Beekman to try to match those features, such as enlarged tree pits, and also to investigate any sustainable or green infrastructure or green garden or impermeable pavement or any other features that might help reduce stormwater runoff or be in keeping with the Sleepy Hollow complete streets policy.
And Chair Shu, just one question, if I may, for Mr. Mooney. When do you anticipate completing the investigation of the on-site drainage?
I would think that would be after the first of the year that we would get out and do that. And Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think given the holidays right now, to get a crew out there to be able to do that would probably be right after the first of the year.
Okay.
Candidly, I've been trying to get somebody out there prior to this meeting, and I've been unsuccessful to get someone to come out, like a cook, to clean out the drains. I thought you, James, I thought you wanted a little bit more than just removing the organic debris. We really needed to get in there and vacuum them out.
Yeah, I'd love to see what they connect to and where they go. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Marjorie, just to follow up on, there was a comment made by Aaron as we were discussing this application. I think it was part of the work session, but it also ties into what Mr. Mooney had described about the sidewalk improvements along North Washington. And while you're doing that, whether you would consider adding tree wells so that we could add some new plantings along North Washington. Again, that's part of the complete streets policy that Aaron had referred to earlier.
Right, I think I had sent a letter into Sean saying that whatever, I'm not aware of what the plan is on Beekman or the timing, but we would be happy to look at the improvements that are planned on Beekman and try to coordinate the work with North Washington so that they make sense and work together.
Good.
Okay, terrific. And we certainly would like you to invest in replacing that empty tree well that's there so that we add to the beautification of that
Sure.
that block. Okay. Have you seen the complete streets policy that Ms. Carney has referred to?
I have not seen that as of yet, but I'll reach out to Sean and make sure I get a copy of that.
Forward it over to you.
Okay, perfect. And if there's anything we can do to assist, don't hesitate. Okay. Are we ready to move to resolution? Can the rest of the open items be managed by Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Natarelli? What do you feel comfortable with, Sean?
I think there's enough that has been presented that if the board is comfortable, we can start preparing the resolution for next month. In the meantime, though, I'm sure there'll be progress made on answering some of these questions. In the meantime, we can get the rest of the documentation together.
Okay, sounds good. So, Mr. David Smith, would you prepare a resolution for the next meeting, please? And I guess with that, we can close the public hearing. So I move to close the public hearing. Can I get a second?
Yeah, seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Lindsay?
Aye.
Kirsten?
Aye.
Erin?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So with that, we will see you on January 21st, 2021 for the resolution.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
Yes, see you in the new year. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Phase 3 preliminary subdivision plat and Block OP partial site plan approval, Edge on Hudson. Okay. So who's kicking this off? Is this Mr. Tung? Are you gonna begin? We can't hear you.
Sorry. Good evening again.
Good evening.
Andrew Tung from Dipping Tung Schwalbe on behalf of Edge on Hudson. On Block OP, I'm pleased to report that we were able to obtain our variance last night from the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's a height variance for the first 3 units closest to Legend Drive within the 20 townhomes proposed as part of OP1. With that, we believe we're in conformance with the requirements of both the RDCP and the zoning code as applicable within the RF district.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, would it be possible to add Mark Weingarten and John Stein as panelists?
Of course, I'm not the host, but I'm sure Sean can accommodate.
Thank you.
Marjorie, is the public hearing still open on this one? You know.
Actually, we closed the public hearing last month.
I was going to move to close it if we didn't, so.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, good evening. It's Mark Weingarten on behalf of Lighthouse Landings, and thank you, for adding me. It seems like every week I get added at the last minute, so it's. I don't know if I should start taking it personally or not, but thank you. Thank you.
As I said, my hands are not on the controls.
I just did have to mention that. So we are at a little bit of a disadvantage tonight. We appreciate the hard work that went in to put the resolution together. As you know, the spirit of this in cooperation and the idea had been from the start to create a small number of units from just a section of the block, because to take advantage of the market conditions, which as they were developed by the by toll, they really mirror what was across the street. And that was the idea, so that we could move on them quickly and make them happen quickly. We've received this, we've received the resolution tonight. And the resolution has a few things in it that we're actually not sure whether we're going to be able to comply. So for example, and we've been only talking about this since we got it in the last half hour or so, and we've been texting each other. And I apologize if we need to talk to each other in front of you, but essentially, for example, there were side setbacks and rear setbacks that were added to the requirement of the resolution. I can tell you that section 450.17 of your zoning code for the Riverfront Development District, the RF district, specifically states that bulk standard setbacks and other dimensional requirements of the Riverfront Development Zoning District shall apply to the gross land area of the total riverfront development project, whether or not the gross land area is or will remain in one ownership, and shall not apply to individual or subdivided parcels. So it was specifically discussed that this entire project would be looked at as one land area, even knowing that eventually it would be subdivided, whether for ownership purposes or for others. And that's okay. We can all design and work it through, but there is no legal requirement of any setbacks between particular blocks of one or another. It appears that to us, from the setbacks that were put into the resolution, that for the side setbacks and the rear setbacks, that we don't comply with those. They are more restrictive than was required on the Block J. We haven't had this conversation with anyone, so I'd start with trying to understand what the purpose of that was before we had the conversation, because we just have not had this conversation with anyone, so we just don't know how it got in there. So maybe we can start with that, and we can go through a few others if you might.
Well, I can start, and then I'm sure others will chime in. So I think we're kind of learning as we go, right? That as we've seen the first phase of townhouses being built, there's a concern that there's a kind of homogeneity that I've talked about with Mr. Stein as well as Mr. Chafkin. And Peter and I actually spent an hour or so walking around the development one morning or afternoon. I don't remember, it was a couple of months ago. So we were kind of in the alignment that for the next phase of townhouses, we wanted to see more differentiation between the townhouses and more kind of architectural interest and more treatments of the facade to, you know, not have hundreds and thousands of townhouses that, you know, were kind of cookie cutter-ish. So that's kind of at a high level, some of the comments as far as not mirroring townhouses. We want to see kind of more aesthetically interesting and differentiated treatments of the facade.
We get that, and we'll get to that in a moment, and we understand it. And I'll also try to stress the differentiation between trying to get these 20 units done versus all of the rest of the townhouses. The hundreds of them are coming behind them, and there's lots of opportunity for that as we go along. But specifically, the setback issue, which is not the architectural issue or not the facade issue or anything in that nature, it seems to now be set at a point, and again, it's hard for us to do it in a half hour, but it seems that the requirement is more than, or is more restrictive than what our design is. So we hadn't had a problem with the setback issue, and we were surprised to see it in there. So we were just curious as to how it got there and what was the purpose behind it, because we did not think that was even something that was on the table because it was never discussed. So that was number one. That was the setback issue. And again, I want to just stress that my point was it's not a legal requirement. So there must be, there's a rationale for it. It's not the code that's requiring it unless that was an error. So if there is a requirement or there is a rationale behind it, we'd like to know what it is, and then maybe we can respond to it. But so we absolutely have an issue with the side and the rear setbacks. We may have a problem with the front setbacks, although it appears when we look at that, we may be in compliance with it, that 15-foot setback. And again, we're doing this off a napkin at the moment and not doing it very specifically because we're doing it quickly. We think we may be in compliance on the front setback, but we're bringing up the others because we think that we may not. And we don't know. And maybe if some of your professionals have done that analysis, we'd be interested to hear from them, because maybe we're making something out of nothing where they would say, no, 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 you do comply with this. And that's why we put it in there. We just don't know.
Do any of you that consider yourselves professionals want to chime in?
We consider you all professionals. These are paid professionals I was referring to.
Well, I'll chime in if you want. For example, the front yard setback is probably fairly close to what has been proposed on the J block, probably within a foot. The side yard, same thing. And I think the distance that's recommended between the units is probably either equal to or maybe even less than what's actually out there already. So I don't think you'll have a problem complying with that. I think the purpose of it was to provide enough space for in that front yard and in the side yards to have the future townhouses comply with what has been proposed in the past in the design guidelines and in the kit-up parts. So that we can get the proper landscape areas, the proper patios, the proper sidewalk and amenities that have been described in documents in the past.
And are those spaces consistent with what's been done across the street in Block J, or are they intended to be more restrictive?
I don't think they're more restrictive, and they're not intended to establish setbacks. As Mr. Weingarten has stated, we understand that the whole project doesn't have those bulk requirements, but in moving forward with the O and P, we were asked to figure out and analyze what has been done in J and either confirm that with more specificity in O and P or suggest modifications. So again, I don't think that, I think we mentioned 6 feet or 7 feet in the front.
Again, I'm just reading from the resolution. I wasn't suggesting, but it said, what it says is, it says that number 8 says side yard setbacks for end units shall be not less than 10 feet. So that is a setback. Mm-hmm. And it says on 7, front yard setback shall be not less than 7 feet for units facing the public road. So they're creating setbacks within the resolution.
And again, the purpose of that is to have consistency so that we do have consistent plans moving forward that either relate or modify what has been done in Block J.
Well,
look, I can tell you if these, just focusing on these for a moment, if it's consistent with what, the site plan that we've submitted, if it's consistent with what's shown on that drawing, and if it's consistent with what was done in Block J, we don't have any issue with it. But just the concern is from a quick look, it appears that some of the things that are shown on the existing site plan don't jive with these requirements. And we're just, we don't mean to be confrontational by any means. It's just a little alarming to, coming into a meeting and not, no one sort of mentioned, we haven't had a conversation. No one discussed any of this with us beforehand. So just seeing it.
No,
I'll
but the
even say
issue
this.
come up before though.
We know how much work it took to get it in on time, and it's anxiety producing for us because we're trying to do something in a half hour. We apologize because you're trying to help us accomplish something by doing something tonight. Nobody's criticizing. We just can't look at it and know as a fact that we can comply with it. And that's why we're asking questions. We're trying to make sure that it can work for us and won't require us to come back and have to change the approval. That's really what we're trying to avoid.
That's right.
You know, so for example, Madam Chair, we have no issue with articulation of the front facades as required. We know that, and we'll do that, and it has to be complied with and it has to be done. But it's things like the setbacks, it's things like, you know, roof pergolas shall be open to the sky and open on 3 sides, not less than 70% of the openness. I don't think we have any way of determining that today, if we're anywhere near complying with that or not. I just don't know, because we're never asked to, or understood that to be a requirement, so we never calculated it. So that's why, again, as we sit here and look at the resolution for the first time this evening, it makes us concerned that there may be something in here that we may not be able to comply with, for example. And that's basically what and I don't necessarily have an answer for it. I'm just letting you know what what our reaction and response is to what we saw tonight.
Yep, that's fair. David Smith, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I think, part of the issue, Peter and Mark and Craig and James, is that you've had an opportunity to submit your plan for Block J, to get them built, so that the planning board and the public actually gets to see something how has it been implemented? And part of the process has been that you've been granted the site plan approval, and really the ARB function that the planning board has been left up to you as the applicant, basically coming in and submitting your plans to the building department. There really hasn't been a planning board review of the facades, of this whole issue with the front setback and the relationship of the unit to the public realm, which was very important in the when the planning board was first discussing this application as part of Block J, as part of the phase 1 site plan. And so I think part of what you're seeing in these comments in the resolution is that the planning board wants to take a more active role in the design of the units, so that there is a relationship and a responsibility of how the unit relates to the public realm. And I think that to me is one aspect that's been overlooked. And so what you're hearing is the planning board is taking a more active role and what is in their responsibility and role as part of the approval process.
And so it's clear that is a point well taken. Nobody is objecting to the fact that is the role of the planning board. We're not saying that. Again, I think where we diverge a bit is that the concept of this was we came in for quote unquote expediting of an approval. Normally we would have been coming in with many more units for much more land area. We would have been doing an entire block or 2 blocks in this inches, and we would be doing a full design with you. The idea was there's out of 1,200 units, we're talking about a very, very small number of units at 20 units. But because of the market conditions and because it was in everybody's interest, we came in with a plan that said, look, we have an approval, it's here. It may not be perfect, and you are learning from it, but it's pretty darn good and it's selling and people like it. And we came in and asked for permission to do a very small number of units, and we still want to be able to do that to take advantage of it. And I would just respectfully request that everything that you and Sean are saying is fine. And we're going to have that discussion with you going forward for months and months on lots of new units as they come in. Are we asking for it to be, maybe we're asking to look a little past that and delay it to the next step. But, the idea is this is 20 units, and we'd like to not have anything in the resolution that's going to prevent us from being able to go forward quickly, because if we have to come back and redo it, we might as well have just done the entire area and not just done the few number of units. So, I mean, that's, but we're not objecting to what you're saying, and we're happy to go through that procedure with you, but we're looking to do that on the future units.
So,
I just have a
go ahead,
question.
Kristen.
Yeah, am I incorrect in thinking that you would be able to proceed forward in an expedited manner as we're trying to facilitate, and yet you would be able to come back with those further details of facade and the things that are in that list for us to look at again in the future? The two aren't exclusively, I say they're not at odds with each other, that these two things can coexist.
Well,
Right.
except
I'll chime in.
Kirsten,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So James Fitzpatrick with Toll Brothers. There are things that may seem to be minor modifications to a plan, right? So as Mark said, we're looking to really just kind of continue the momentum that we have in this smaller grouping of the 20 townhomes within phase 3 by continuing to utilize the plans that we've developed in J block and looking at them a little differently from an aesthetic standpoint on the exterior, but they're still the same plans. And to make a push or a pull where you're moving a wall 2 feet or a fourth floor space is being reduced by 10% or 15%, like the dominoes start to fall, and the amount of work that it takes to kind of stand those redesigns back up. You're essentially designing all new homes in our world. Everything from our engineering up through your architecture to the point where I don't have model homes that I can demonstrate that show a customer what I'm selling them in these 20 lots, because they'll be different homes and they may be different by a foot here or 2 feet there or different on the fourth floor. But to us, that's very significant because it's not what we're selling. So I'm essentially hitting restart, and I'm losing any efficiencies that I could have gained by really having these 20 units be an extension of the J block.
And Mr. Fitzpatrick, is that concern because of the setbacks? Because certainly we as a planning board or the ARB are not moving your walls around, right?
Well, some of the comments or some of the conditions in here might, like, I don't know, whether my fourth floor space is a certain percentage of the third floor space below it. I certainly know my fourth floor space on my end units are greater than 50% of the third floor space below it. So now I'm redesigning a complete fourth floor that I don't have a model home to demonstrate. So there are some very significant conditions that might look to be and I don't, and like Mark said, I don't know. Like I don't know whether my roof pergolas occupy more than 75% of my roof area in every permutation of roof that I sell my customers. That's a condition that I've never had to explore. I do know we went through some extremely great lengths to locate the roof pergolas that we are installing because of real concerns that related to uplift and everything else that were unique to the site conditions of Edge. So again, these could be what look to be minor modifications can lead to drastic delays for us on the back end.
Understanding that you just received the draft resolution and we as a planning board want you to go back and compare this to your specific plans and not on the back of a cocktail napkin. Can you do that and look at these comments more carefully and
well, I guess so. I would ask the board: there's some pretty specific there's measurement metrics that are in these conditions. Are these being inserted into the resolution because the board is unhappy with something? Is it being measured against what's out there, or are they arbitrary thresholds that were just established? If they were inserted to make sure that what we do is consistent with what has been done, then like Mark said, we're very comfortable with that.
Could I even ask something, just to jump in, James? You know, one of the ways that maybe we could do this, because I think hopefully you know that we would be doing this in good faith. Maybe we don't take them out, but simply make them as that we would utilize our best efforts to comply with these requirements for these 20 units and be able to come back when we come back with the architectural review board, show you what we've been able to do and not do, and give you an explanation if we haven't been able to achieve it. And then, you know, have an approval in hand and be able to go forward with it towards building and not have a specific requirement of it must be this amount, you know, this feet or this percentage. Whereas if we don't comply with it, we would have to come back and redo the approval, et cetera. And it would just be, you know, a big problem for us. Just a suggestion that maybe that's something that was kind of middle ground that might work.
My suggestion would be actually the opposite, which is why don't you go back and take a look and see if your setbacks are in compliance and if there's actually an issue, rather than leave it up to, you know, best effort.
Well, it just means we have to wait for at least another meeting for an approval. That's why. So, I mean, that's our rationale for it.
Yeah, and to the board's concern, you know, or desire that, you know, what we're building is, you know, a quality product in the spirit of what was the underlying, you know, design principles. You know, we did, Edge did receive a couple of very notable accolades in December. So the National Association of Home Builders named Edge on Hudson the Multifamily Community of the Year. Silver Award winner. So it's one of the 5 communities that are in the top vote getter and one of the 5 finalists for the Gold Award. And we also received the honor of the same designation for our model homes. So, you know, these are pretty high bars as far as achievements go. And that's certainly in large part to, you know, Sleepy Hollow's contribution and your participation in the approval and in the design guidelines and what led us here. But we're very proud of what we're doing out there.
I hadn't heard that, so thanks for sharing that information and congratulations to the entire Edge on Hudson team.
I mean, just to restate, you know, I think we're all very, very open to the spirit of what this new language that you've added in. I don't think there's any objection whatsoever in the board. You know, we have no objection to the board wanting to play a bigger role in overseeing how the kit of parts gets implemented in your capacity as ARB. That's not a problem for us coming back. And, you know, some of the notes about, you know, avoiding mirrored facades and articulation being required and vertical delineation on the front and the rear being required, we embrace those wholeheartedly. The issue again is simply coming back to these specific percentages and distance requirements that could possibly be in conflict. And frankly, I believe some of them are in conflict with what's on the site plan in front of you this evening, and certainly with what is approved across the street. You know, to the extent that they're not in conflict, and also, frankly, if they are, we have no problem using our, you know, best efforts to try and modify the design to meet the standards that you would like to see. Again, as Mark said, the issue that we have here is timing. And as you know, we came to you in, I forget if it was September or October, and said, we're in a unique market right now where because of the global pandemic that we've all been suffering from, there's been a phenomenal demand for townhomes, and there's been really incredible momentum. And because of that, Toll Brothers is running out of product to sell. And the reason why we came in asking for 20 units is because if we get within a certain number of months, if we can get these approved, then Toll Brothers can continue their sales effort unbroken at the project. And I can't overemphasize how valuable to all of our mutual success momentum is. And when there is momentum going, we it is in everyone's best interest that we ride that wave of momentum, because if that momentum stops because we've run out of product to sell, it is extremely, extremely challenging to restart that. And that's my overarching concern here. Because please, I hope you'll recall that after we receive an approval from you, in order to sell a unit, Toll Brothers needs to go to the New York State Attorney General's office and get a condominium offering plan approved. And that plan can't really be prepared even until there is an approved site plan with dimensions and everything else. So I'm concerned, in full candor, that if we wait another month for an approval, there's a real chance that these 20 units won't be ready to sell in time. Toll will run out of units to sell, and that's that would be a really unfortunate situation. So I'm not saying that to apply any undue pressure to the board. I'm just trying to articulate my anxiety over this situation, because I don't think anyone intends for that to happen. And I would be remiss if I didn't state that concern to the board.
Just a question of clarification based on what I'm hearing or what I'm gathering. Some of the points that have been outlined, you have no objection to. Others you're unsure of, and some maybe trouble you more. And if I'm thinking the fourth floor enclosure or the roof pergola percentages, those seem to be more troubling to you because I think they might be at odds with what has been built in Block J. Is that correct?
Potentially, yeah. And also, the location of meters. I don't, I thought we pretty much exhausted every alternative that we could to avoid having to locate meters where they were located. I could be mistaken, but and some of that had to do with complying with the village, and some of that had to do with complying with Con Edison. So I don't even know if we can physically find other homes for those meters and satisfy all parties. I'd love to figure it out if we can, because the last thing I want is a meter located on the front of a $1.5 million townhome. But the dimensions of the home are the dimensions of the home, and the requirements for setbacks and offsets are what they are through Con Edison. And so I don't even know if that's achievable.
So if you want to, articulate it, conditions, the conditions that were added that are the most concerning to us, that we're afraid of being able to meet, are 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, and 13. Now, what I can also say on the record is, if this is what the board wants to see, then as Mark said, when we come in and do our designs for the balance of block O and P, so that whatever units there are in excess of these 20, we can use these as standards and see if we can design to them, if this is what the board is looking for. So, we can do our best to implement these going forward, and we'll address in our submission what, if there are any that we can't meet for one reason or another. But, again, it's just for the purpose of where we are right now. We don't know if we can accommodate those, which is why Mark's suggestion, if you're comfortable with it, we're happy to try to do, we're happy to try to do this, but, but I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry. I don't.
Yeah, but Peter, in the resolution, it's kind of bifurcated a little bit. So you're getting a site plan approval for the 20 units. And then before you get the issuance of a foundation permit is when you would need to have this other approval, quote unquote, ARB approval.
Right.
So it provides you with some time. I think you said there was an issue with the Attorney General's office. So if you have a site plan that's approved for the 20 units and you still have to come back later, does that provide you with the timing?
I mean, I think the problem, as James was saying, Dave, is that some of these conditions affect the built condition of the fourth floor. And, you know, if he doesn't know what he can sell on that fourth floor, even if there's an approved site plan, he can't prepare his offering statement, right? If he doesn't know, you know, what that condition can be.
Your offering plan has to reflect the floor plans, among other things. You have to physically show.
Yeah, this is a
what you're building.
condominium, so we just have to disclose all of our offering plans. So really, if I don't have the ability to essentially roll the offering, you know, the meat of the offering plan that was for phase one, you know, into these 20 units here, you know, I'm losing potentially 3-4 months, you know, in totality. The AG approval process on its own, you know, best case scenario is 90 to 120 days from when you submit.
Because remember, as you all know, we've modified the design, the aesthetic design from Block J. We've added the, more replaced brick with stone and some more cementitious siding. We've worked to modify the aesthetic while keeping the basic structural building the same. Now the kits of parts can be implemented differently, and we've agreed to, implement additional rules to create even more variation. But from a construction perspective, the physical structure is basically the same bones, let's say, as what Toll already has, which expedites things. And some of the potential changes as it relates to the fourth floor enclosed area and the pergola, those percentages, those are the dominoes that James was talking about. That shrinking those spaces can create a chain reaction that the structural elements of the building could need to be changed, and then they're in a whole redesign. And for lay people, it seems like no big deal, but there is a cascading effect, and that's what we're concerned with.
Well, I think, Peter, part of what you're hearing is a reaction to you've essentially created a model, which is essentially a rectangle with no variation. And what you're hearing and what was part of the kit of parts is that there was going to be some variation in the building heights, and the facade. And I think that's part of what these notes are about, is in particular is having different, just kind of, instead of a rectangle, it's got some variation. I think that's what you're hearing is a reaction from the village that what was described in the initial application with some variation isn't coming to fruition. And it's basically one big rectangle after another. No offense, James, but that's essentially what is being proposed and what's being built. And I think that's you're hearing that there's a reaction to that, and that they want the planning board wants to see more variation in design. Now it's up to the planning board whether they want to move forward with these 20 and then institute more detailed recommendations as been outlined. But I think, Peter, James, you've been kind of put on notice. This issue has been coming up with this application when it was submitted, that there's some real concerns. The planning board wanted to know what was built, what the configurations were, how they compared, the building widths. And so now you're kind of getting to a point where a flashpoint where the planning board is reacting. And the planning board is that's the planning board, the ARB, and they've got another set of criteria that they have to respond to. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to work through at this point.
So, Peter, when you and I were walking through the property, what I understood to be the sales process is, you know, I go and I decide whether I want bump outs and balconies and patios and such. This suggests that that building is gonna mirror what's on Block J, and buyers don't get that ability to choose from the kit of parts. It's basically already predetermined.
No, and James can articulate this in far more detail than I can, and certainly any of us probably want to hear. But in a nutshell, a buyer will get to choose those types of structural options, that like a bump out, a bay window, those options which will affect the facade of the building are choices that the buyer gets to make. But what is happening behind the scenes is those are pre-engineered structural options that Toll Brothers they design every permutation of the building. So they know that, every building has the structural elements to support the bay window if somebody buys it. But if nobody buys it, it doesn't matter. That goes into their process. And maybe I should let James speak about it in greater detail, but it's basically all of that behind the scenes work is there. So buyer gets choice, but the buildings work from an engineering and a structural perspective.
Yeah, that's correct. We touched on it briefly in our initial presentation. The homes were designed from a structural standpoint and a foundation standpoint to accommodate any permutation of design that the customer would want to choose to build on it. So for example, on the first floor, a buyer could utilize that first floor space as a home office with a patio out front on lots where the grading allows it. So they would have, patio doors opening up to a private patio, or they can use it as an ensuite, and they can have a full bathroom and a bedroom on that floor. On the second floor, we have plans that locate the kitchens in the rear of the homes, plans that locate the kitchen in the center of the homes, and those change both the front and the rear facades. We have bump outs on the end units for the dining rooms, and most customers are choosing those so they can expand their dining room out by a couple of feet. And it also adds an architectural element to the side elevation of the home. We offer Juliet balconies. Some are baked into, we have elevations that are pre-designed. So some elevations incorporate those Juliet balconies. But buyers can also add a Juliet balcony if they're not included in that elevation standard. On the third floor, there's plans that are 3 bedrooms on the third floor or 2 bedrooms on the third floor, and that changes the location and the size of the master bedroom. And again, you're changing windows, you're changing the Juliet balconies, and then obviously on the fourth floor, it's there's buyers can choose to have an open terrace, which is demonstrated in one of our model homes, which is primarily a larger outdoor space, or they can choose to have a finished loft area with an additional bedroom, or they can have a finished loft space with a indoor-outdoor living room that's open to the elements, but still covered. So we offer for given the restrictions of inherent in a 20 or 22 foot wide by 45 to 50 foot deep footprint. I think that we have programmed in a lot of variability and the ability to customize, much more so than is what's traditional in this type of, townhome design. And I would also say that, if you look at the park elevations, right, those homes that face the green space versus the village elevations and the homes that face the apartment, the I block and also block O and P, those are very different styled homes. And, there's something to be said also for this sort of variation in aesthetic to happen in blocks. And I think that we've captured that too in O and P, where O and P is going to grab some elements, so there's some continuity across the community, but they look very different than the park elevations in J block and the village elevations in J block.
The one thing I've noticed with the block J, I think, is that while the variety of options in the kit apart exists, they're not always selected in that variety, so that you end up having maybe a repetition of some of those choices that ends up making things look more monolithic or more built out than expected. Like maybe there's more lofts that have been chosen instead of some yes, some not.
Well,
And
that's the
I don't
market,
know
right?
much
So you weigh how much do you predetermine and pre-select versus how much do you let to be market driven. And we weren't, we were a bit unsure of what the market was going to be looking for in this product because it's fairly new to this, northeast, geographic area, which is why we programmed so much variability and flexibility structurally into our design, so we could accommodate whatever the market was looking for. But we show in our model homes, as many different kind of permutations as we can, both in our physical model homes, and then we also have virtual model homes that we've programmed to be the opposite uses that we're showing physically in our physical models, right? So we can show customers everything that they can choose from. So we're happy to have a conversation about how much do you pre-program in versus how much do you let the market choose. So long as that we're not programming in stuff that the market has very clearly told us they don't, they're not interested in.
One of the things that was added is the utility meters and the mechanical systems. Certainly none of us want that in the front of the units. Can you explain why Con Ed requires that to be in the front?
Yeah, and Sean may have to help me out here too, because I know he was really involved with the guys in the field when they were working through the issue as well. So there are certain, the dimensions of the homes are either the 20 or 22 foot wide home with the 2-car garage in the rear. You're required to have certain offsets from where your gas meter is to whether it's to certain openings, and also the same for the electric meter, where you can't have these two things within certain dimensions of each other. So when you're looking at the back of a 20 foot wide residence and you have a 2-car garage door taking up 16 feet, you're not left with very much room on either side of that door in order to accommodate everything that you would like to accommodate. We have accomplished this in other ways in other communities where we've ganged meters on the sides of buildings and we run up because they're condominiums. You can we have been able to in the past run those gas supplies up and even the electrical supplies up and then kind of through the building, right, to the units that they need to get to. but that wasn't permitted here. So we really just ran out of options. And I will say that not that they disappear, but if you do even, if you view our, I can share my screen and pull up our website to show you a front elevation of a home. Given the mass of the building, when you are looking at the building in total, they're not invisible, but they're certainly not something that's like, this is a a massive eyesore. And we sell to some pretty demanding customers in a price point where people are going to be very specific in their tastes and what they'll tolerate. And to date, it has not been, we're very sensitive to deal breakers, right? Somebody who's not going to move forward with a purchase because of a specific reason. To date, I have not been encountered with an instance where somebody would not move forward with a purchase because of the location of a utility meter.
Sean, do you have any suggestions for how those meters could be placed elsewhere? Because speaking for myself personally, maybe it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but it would get on my nerves every single day as I walked in the front door. So maybe I'm more sensitive.
Yeah, they definitely, from a spatial standpoint, when they're trying to place the meters in areas where there's very limited opportunities because of openings and because of other utilities. I mean, Con Edison has their requirements on distance separations and clearances that are required. So, it does limit the possibilities. But I will say that they've, at our request, they've actually moved meters. They've lowered them to try to reduce the visual impact. And what they've been doing on the latest buildings is actually at least take the N units and move the N unit meters to the sides, which again takes 2 meters off the front of the building. So they are making improvements where they can.
And I think, Sean, thank you for that. That's great feedback. And I think that foots nicely. And I hope that's an example of, Toll and we will try to get we'll do what we can. We'll try to get them, off the fronts. We understand why you think it's objectionable. We'd rather them be somewhere else as well. But again, that's where it just falls to the concern, the language in the resolution says they shall not be on the front. And that just may be unavoidable. We're happy to use our best efforts to get them off the front. Madam Chair, if you're talking, you're muted.
Thanks, Peter. So you had a concern with quite a few of them, but again, if we can get Sean to kind of maybe chime in and guide us through talking through your concerns on a point-by-point basis. I guess the setbacks are all kind of a similar issue, and based on Sean's professional opinion, he thinks that you're within or close to compliance. I think you had a concern about the pergolas.
Madam Chair, if I could speak on the setbacks for a moment.
Sure.
I don't have my drawings here tonight, but I know that we do not meet any of the 7, 8, or 9. I believe the buildings to be similar to Block J, generally 5 feet from the back of the public sidewalk. The side yard for N units is approximately 5 feet, as they were for Block J. And the distance between adjacent N units, as in Block J, is 10 feet. So we don't meet any of those. I don't know the exact number by which we don't meet them, but as currently drawn, we don't.
Okay, well, that's very specific, so that's helpful. Sean, do you have a response?
Yeah, again, I can check with because we actually have as-built surveys now based upon where buildings have actually landed on site. And I will tell you that on Legend Drive, the setback on the existing survey is actually 5.98 feet. So we're at roughly 6 feet. And I think the request was to go to 7 feet. So we're very close there. Also, we have a distance between the buildings of 1 through 6 and then 7 to 11. And it's actually over 15 feet. So you're in compliance there. The corner setback is more. There's a corner setback on Horseman Drive of almost 7 feet on the corner there. So again, they're plus or minus, but they were intended to just set some guidance moving forward. And for example, the reason why this was looked at again, and Dave, I believe, had alluded to it before, but the 6 foot that's currently constructed on Legend Drive as a setback is not allowing for that opportunity for the amenity space in the front, where there was depicted as a patio space and maybe some landscaping. They've actually learned that based upon that as-built condition, that is no longer an option for buyers. The 7 foot, perhaps you could maybe get something else in there. So these are the type of things that the planning board, the intention was for the planning board to look at and see if in fact you'd be making an improvement to the OP block by tweaking these existing conditions and making them perhaps better.
Andy, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe we looked at that pretty in depth back in 2018. The patio conditions and what homes would be able to accommodate patios and what homes would not because of both setback and also grading elevation conditions, right? Those units along the perimeter that lined Legend and the Palisade and how the Washington Wall left you with a condition where those patios weren't achievable.
Yes, because of the change in grade, because of the grade, the required grade of the minimum grade of the townhomes was 2 to 3 feet higher than the street grades, which were set based on overall drainage. They were more fixed than the ones on the interior of the block, where we were able to raise the interior drives to meet them so that they could be at grade. I just to speak to Sean's measurements, I don't doubt those, but the spacing around Block J is not consistent between all of the units. So whereas the spacing along Legend might be 15 feet, the spacing, I think, along Palisades was 10 feet between adjacent units. At least that's how it shows
You're
up.
probably right, Andy. I just happened to pull out one of the surveys that I had handy here. That's all.
Right, right.
Um, how about the pergolas? Sean, do you have any comments on that?
Actually, yeah, I'll go through all of them if you like, but I mean, a lot of it has to do, and again, it was all taken off of what has been already proposed and what has been submitted as the as-built conditions. So quite frankly, I believe number 5, which was the 4th floor enclosed roof areas, just establishing a limitation on that so that the entire 4th floor won't become a level, and it would provide at least a minimal outdoor space. So that would guarantee that into the design. The 70% is, again, it's reflected off of a typical 20 by, I think it's 42 townhouse, which has been the most popular one. And I think currently you probably have about a 10 or 12 foot outdoor space there at minimal, which would pretty much jive with those numbers. And then we talk about also on the N units. I know the model unit actually is what that percentage was taken off of, where you have terraces on both the, it's the smallest build out of your loft area, where you have terraces on 2 sides and also on the corner, which again is more in keeping with what the design guidelines illustrate as being the corners of the overall townhouses, where they step down in height. Then we talked about the setbacks already. And then the pergolas actually coincide with the loft area coverage. So again, we took what has been proposed as the typical pergola, but what we found out, which was different than the plans, is that they're not open pergolas. The pergolas that are built on site are actually mechanical. So they actually can open or they can close. So again, not to have a pergola that again would roof off the balance of a loft area, there would be a restriction on making that pergola being open to the sky. And basically the openness is just a percentage of your typical construction of a pergola. And that's, if you're 70% open, you're very open. And then actually some of the restrictions on a pergola too, about being open on at least 3 sides. Again, that's what you've been doing. It's attached to one end of the building. That restriction would just prevent, people from enclosing the pergola. And again, going back to enclosing more space on the 4th floor. And then we talked about the meters and the vent terminations. And I will say too, the Toll Brothers has gone to the extent of taking their air conditioner compressors, which were either going to be located on the terrace, on the roof terrace level, or on the ground floor area outside the buildings, and they've constructed a screen up on the top of the loft and have screened that in with, architectural similar materials to not only get them away from the public, but reduce the noise and the visibility of them. So again, modifications that have been successful, I think. But some of these dimensions, again, they're open for critique and evaluation, but they've been based upon what's out there, or a combination of the different options that have been proposed in the past. They're not meant to put additional restrictions on what already has been proposed.
So we certainly want to support your momentum, as Mr. Chafkin describes it. We don't want Toll to run out of inventory. And so even as we're looking to, accelerate these 20 townhouses, we still feel that we can do better than we did in Block J. So that's our interest in putting more language into the resolution. And I think the level of specificity is attempting to make it more manageable in that they are specific as opposed to, just asking for greater variety in facade treatments. It's offering specific guidance as to the kinds of things that we think would be meaningful. I should do my homework prior to each planning board meeting, but I have not gone to your website as far as the number of C of Os, as how many people are living on the property. I did see the big Heinz parking structure, which was hard to miss. But can you give kind of an overview of where you are relative to sales and occupancy and your pipeline?
Yeah, sure. So we could start with the brownstone. So yeah, hold on one second. I'll log on and I'll get you some exact get you some exact numbers. And I can share a screen as well too, if that might make things a little easier.
Sure.
All right, let me get to. There, you can see Block J. So everything on the plan that you see that is in red is sold. The homes that are in blue, 71 and 72 are 2 model homes. Homes that are in yellow are currently spoken for, right? The customers that left the reservation deposits but haven't signed an agreement of sale. Homes in green are available for sale, with customers still being able to come in and kind of customize their floor plans and the kit of parts. And then those homes in purple are homes that we've already started developing architecture for, or are already in some stage of construction. So those are what we deem as quick deliveries or more move-in ready homes.
So those purple are ones that you've already designed, and the prospective buyers don't get as much choice in those configurations?
That's correct. Yeah. So we'll, we do have some ability to, if a buyer comes in and wants to make a change that is not going to require us to restart architecture, then we'll accommodate. But yeah, at this point, we have a pretty good handle on what our customers are looking for, and what different types of customers are looking for. So we won't when we do plan out our kind of quick delivery homes, we don't we wouldn't plan out 5 of the exact same thing, because they happen to be it's the best seller, right? No, we'll program in variability so we can accommodate a buyer who's looking for 4 bedrooms, or a buyer is looking for 3 bedrooms, or a buyer who really needs a first floor ensuite, or so a buyer who really wants exactly what's in the model home, because you always get a couple of buyers like that too. So we'll replicate exactly what's in our model home. So to date on the brownstones, so 72 total lots. And I will, one last comment. units 40 through 45, that's where our sales gallery is located. So those home sites are they're reserved and that they're not open for sale. So as you can see, we're really at the tail end of these initial phase one townhomes.
And so for all the red units that are sold, when do you expect them to be occupied?
Various timelines throughout the year. So of the 72 lots, we've settled 7 to date, and we have 48 homes that are sold and not yet settled. And our settlements will run out. We're looking to do, of those 48, we're looking to settle about 40 of them between now and the end of October, which is our fiscal year. So we got our work cut out for us. And those are even flowed out through the course of the calendar year. As we sell, we'll just, that's kind of also why we look at building these quick delivery homes, or we just look to kind of roll production. Because again, as Peter mentioned earlier, similar to sales momentum, production and construction momentum is the same. You want to keep the trades on the site and just kind of moving from one building to the next. There's a lot of efficiencies when you do that versus having guys leave the job and try to get them back on the job.
I think Sandra Spiro is still on, unless, yep. I don't know if the Board of Trustees has gotten an update on this whole plan that you're sharing with us this evening. I wonder, I think it may make sense for.
I am here. Sorry about that. I had to pull it up.
No worries, no worries. Whether it makes sense for Edge and Toll and the Board of Trustees and the Planning Board to have an update on the RDCP as you all are trying to figure out your timeline for the common and the triggers for the milestones for Edge on Hudson, that I think it may make sense for all of us to come together and kind of lay out the master timeline for, what all the triggers and deliverables and such are. I had talked about that with Ken, that might make sense. So since you're here as the trustee representative, I wonder if that makes sense.
Yes, I do. Could I ask, do you envision that happening and being in alignment with what the timing is that they're asking for right now? It would just be rolling with what they're doing right now. It's not stalling what they're asking for, correct?
Well, we certainly would never want to stall Edge on Hudson, but it sounds like they need some time also to kind of look at the requirements that we just gave to them at the 11th hour right before this meeting. So while we would all like to proceed and have tried to bifurcate the resolution to some extent so that the site plan could proceed while we still have some, say over the architectural aspects of the building. I think the developers are, uncomfortable with not really having had any time to study this. So perhaps it makes sense to, I think we have 60 days for action. That
Madam Chair, it's Mark Weingarten. Can I Greg in for a moment?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. It's hard on the Zoom. I apologize. I just don't want to be rude. You're already not inviting me at the beginning of the meetings. I don't want to make it permanent. So, again, we would hope, it is our request tonight, that we do get to an approval. We have seen the way this was bifurcated. We don't have an objection to it. The only objection we had were to specifically delineated, added conditions that we can put numbers on, where we're requesting the ability to give best efforts to comply, and that when we come back for the architectural piece of this, to either have compliance with them or have an explanation for why we're not able to, which would give us an approval now and allow us to go forward. As to the comment about going back to the town board and the milestones, we have no objection to that at all. That's just a mathematical calculation. We already know what those are. We actually have memos, and anytime the village board wants us to come and show them where we are in the process, how many are sold, how many C of Os. I mean, actually, frankly, the milestones are based on C of Os. You have that information as well, but we're happy to put together that and come to the village board at any time and share that and have that conversation. So I don't see how that would impact this from going forward, but I leave that to your own discussions. But I just wanted to mention that on behalf of the applicant.
That's where, and if I can just chime in as well, that's where I was coming from when I was asking if the two could be aligned at the same time. I didn't know if one would precede the other, because I know you have come during occasions and kept the board up to date. I think what Marjorie's asking more is how are all the things connected so that we're paying attention to all that. And I didn't know if that's something that you wanted to put in place before making a final decision. The other thing is just to add as a component, I do recall that because we were five weeks into this month, we were taking one off, if not two. So I don't know when the next time is that we were going to be meeting as a board in December.
Madam Chair, if I might ask, when you're referring to the milestones, you're referring to the payments that are required per units that obtain C of Os. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And again, that's just a pure mathematical calculation. I know that I've seen a memo on that recently, and I know that we have paid the right amount of money. I know that we are at the right point, but we're happy to do that calculation and send the memo in. Peter, we could do that within a few days, correct? We just have to recalculate the number. Yeah, I mean, we can do that next week. And we can share it with both boards. That's just not an issue for us. It's not we're not near that number yet.
Well, I think that's actually the concern, that we're not near that number, and especially with the next discussion as far as Block A, where all those residential units have been taken out of the Block A plan, then further delaying us getting to the next milestone. So,
well, if you want to approve more than 20 units tonight, we'll go to work. I know James will.
Well, we said that from the onset. We were happy to look at the entire Block OP.
I understand. So, we get it.
That was always your prerogative.
You got me.
Okay, so what do you?
Well, again, our request of the board would be to approve the resolution with an amendment identifying the conditions. Peter will give you the numbers again, and requesting those to be a best efforts as opposed to a hard and fast requirement of specific numbers and calculations. And we would come back and comply with, we would have our approval, we'd be able to move forward. We would have to come back to you for the ARB component as it's laid out in the resolution, which would include not only compliance with all of those other conditions, which include the architectural articulation of the facades, et cetera, and then show you one by one each one of those conditions, which ones we have complied with, and if we are not able to comply with some of them by some small amount, to show you exactly why, which hopefully you would then have because it requires our best efforts, you would have the ability to approve it or not approve it, but by suggesting that we did or we did not, or we would have to go back and make a change. But at least rather than adopting these as hard and fast conditions, which you would have no ability to alter those when we came back. You would have to go back, reopen the process, amend the resolution, and then come back again. And we would prefer to avoid that.
Mr. Clinton Smith, any counsel on how best to proceed?
You're faced with a dilemma. The dilemma is that you are imposing certain conditions that really weren't material until today, and the applicant wants/needs a resolution as quickly as possible. And when I say resolution, I don't mean a settlement of the issues, but literally a resolution. I do not find Mr. Weingarten's proposal to be out of the ordinary or problematic in any way. I don't know how much the planning board wants to impose standards to control the development as opposed to imposing standards to guide the development. Following Mark's lead would be imposing standards to guide the development, and leaving the resolution as it is would be imposing standards to structure the development. But I cannot find any problem with Mark's suggestion.
I think my preference is even though it's going to delay the resolution, that the applicant have the opportunity to study the requirements that were presented so late today. And also I'll work with Ken and the Board of Trustees to have a sit down with the applicant to look at the overall RDCP in the context of, the, significant changes to Block A and the milestones that would trigger the payments to the village. So that's how I would proceed. I respect that, the request of Mr. Weingarten are reasonable, but I think it would be prudent to just take the extra weeks to kind of realign amongst all the principals in the village and the applicant on the overall plan, and then refine the language in the resolution such that we could pass it on January 21st intact, rather than putting language in there, best effort.
Madam Chair, the board has in the past, and I'm just going to throw this out there, you have had additional meetings for this particular project. I think it was the first Thursday of the month. So there may be an opportunity, if that, again, it's up to the board, whether you would want to schedule a meeting that would be earlier in the month and try and resolve this issue prior to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is for the 20th.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. That's a really good idea, David. So I'm around, and maybe we can schedule something right after the new year. Let's say January 4th, so that we can, is it January 4th? No, what is the date? January 7th, so that we at least save a couple of weeks.
That would be the second best result, Madam Chair.
And then if I can chime into that as well, Marjorie, you wanted to get with the board prior to that? Is that what your other suggestion was?
Yeah, if not all the trustees, at least, whoever's available.
So why don't we pull that together prior to your meeting? So that we all get on the same page. Like I said, I believe if we didn't have much on the agenda, we were looking to take the rest of December off, but with consideration, maybe we can have a small work session and we can make something happen prior to that so that you're all prepared and set up for the 7th.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Peter, could we commit to getting that memo out to them next week so they'll have it to be able to review it before a meeting?
No problem.
Yeah, so we can get you that milestone analysis next week. So if you want to take off December, you could have a meeting the first week of January or whatever. If you want us to come to that, we're happy to do it in advance of the meeting on the 7th. That would be fine.
Well, and also too, depending on where everything goes with the board, Marjorie, we also have the 5th. I just don't know what we have an organizational meeting. I don't know if Ken would have that prepared for then. So we'll figure that out. But either way, we'll do something.
Yeah, I'll circle with you and Ken tomorrow morning, and we'll see.
You got it.
Not squeeze us all in and not add, a whole month's delay.
Yeah, no, I think this makes a lot of sense based on the everybody's input, and we'll make sure that we facilitate the speed as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The applicant will review the standards that are set forth in the resolution.
We've already started. So the answer is yes, we know that we have to have specific responses available for you by that meeting. We are well aware, and frankly, we may be looking to have conversations with yourself and Sean and David in advance when we determine where we may have some issues to have conversations so we can understand them. So yes, we will be going to work on that.
And I'm not sure. I know that you said last week, or not last week, last meeting, that you weren't concerned with the 60-day time limit. And I believe that we would be within the 60 days still, but I'm assuming.
No, actually, to the contrary, we said we were not worried about the 60-day. You should not worry about the 60-day time limit because whatever we needed to grant, we agreed in advance so you could close your hearing. So that's, we don't view that as relevant. We certainly hope we don't get to 60 days based on where we are. But if we are and we're there, we had agreed in advance that we would not press that issue.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate the conversation, and if some of you are going to stay on for the next Block A discussion, otherwise I wish you happy holidays and see you very early in 2021.
Thank you. You too.
Specifically reschedule or schedule for January, have this particular application on the 7th?
Yes.
The resolution from the board?
Yeah, since we closed the hearing, do we, I don't know, what's the language around what we need to do to set the meeting for January 7th, assuming everybody's available?
I'm sure Sean will speak to Pam and have her notice a meeting of the planning board for the 7th. And on the agenda will be this matter. That's it.
Right, we don't need a motion or anything.
No.
Does the 7th work for everybody for just this agenda item? Lindsay, Aaron, Kirsten, Tom?
Yep.
Ed?
Works.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Last block A. And that is a actual public hearing. So I move to open the public hearing for Edge on Hudson Riverfront development of the Block A proposed retail space site plan approval.
Second.
Lindsay seconds. Ed?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Kirsten?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is open. And we have Mr. Chichico, Nicole, and Mr. DeLeo, and Craig is staying on. Oh, you're all staying on. Okay. Okay. Who's kicking this off?
I'll start. Good evening, Madam Chair. Andrew Tong on behalf of Edge on Hudson. If I may share my screen. As you noted, this is a public hearing for site plan approval of Block A, located along Beekman Avenue at the southeastern portion of the site, adjoining the roundabout, Legend Drive, and the Metro North Railroad tracks. This is a 4.95 acre site on which we're proposing to locate 54,800 square feet of retail stores anchored by a new Chico's Market. Since our last meeting, we have made a further submission to the board on December 3rd, in which we provided some engineering responses to Woodard and Curran's November 13th memo, and made some changes in response to our discussion at our last meeting in November. The most visible of those changes relates to a stair that was under discussion to connect the sidewalk along Beekman Avenue to the lower level. There is, depending upon where you stand on Beekman Avenue, from 35 to 25 feet at this location opposite Hudson Street to negotiate to get down to the parking lot level and enter the Chico's, what I call a pass-through between the market and additional retail buildings on its side. We believe that this location, in particular, because Beekman Avenue continues to go down, opposite Hudson Street, will provide an access way for people walking down Beekman or walking down Hudson to be able to, if they choose, traverse a stair, get down to the lower level, and then cross via crosswalk to the pass-through that gives you entry to the market, proposed liquor store, proposed pharmacy, and a second store, which would have access on Legend Drive. Additionally, there was a question raised about potential for bicycle racks. We've located those racks under the pass-through to provide cover for those biking through the site and give a third means of access besides driving and walking to the site for bikers within Adjourn Hudson. Further, we have supplemented the landscaping both within the parking area and surrounding the parking area so that as you look over the site, you will be looking at an elevated, from an elevated vantage point along Beekman Avenue, which actually gives you a view to the entirety of Adjourn Hudson. So we are not both trying to block the view, nor could we, because the planting on the slope drops off dramatically. But we believe that the setting around the site will complement the walking and the driving in and around the area. Since that time, we've also received further memos from Woodard and Curran, as well as one from Dave Smith. We can review some of those comments tonight. We are preparing written comments, written responses, which will be presented at your next meeting. We also have some updates to some of the architectural drawings, as well as some of the perspectives, which Lucio can go through first, if you'd like to see those. Lucio,
Andy, should I share that?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So let's see. So since last time, we've started working on adding context to our building. We're actually working slowly going around the whole entire perimeter of the building, adding all the proposed designs. This is our building, and obviously these are the Adjourn and the Hudson buildings. The staircase that Andy was referring to, we modeled that. You can get an idea of what it looks like. We started to add the landscaping as it's planned. We're still working on that. But this is a staircase that will bring you down to those walkways and then finally bring you to the entrance to the Chico Market or the other stores. These are all different views we're working on. This is the entrance. This is the access to that covered walkway that will take you to the Chico store, the pharmacy, or the liquor store, or as a pass through. Let's see.
And there are bike racks there, right?
Yep. Sorry, you can actually see the bike racks right here. Let's see if I can zoom into that. No, can't zoom into it. Cart storage. The bicycles are right here that you can see. This is another view from the street, and we're again filling in the landscaping and the perimeter buildings. Back to this one.
Lucio, sorry to interrupt, but if I could just to help provide the context, the building on the right, if you flip back to the last image, just the board is obviously very familiar with the plan, but immediately on the right there, that is the Heinz building, block F. And then all the way in the distance, sort of the terminating view there is block H, the
Right.
waterfront condo building in phase 2.
Right. Unfortunately, it's blocked by the photographs there. Back to this one. This is you can see the bike racks here, cart storage, the staircase that will bring you back up. You can see the height difference between the parking area and the walkway.
Sorry,
And,
Lucio, one more interruption. I also do want to point out that while I think it's wonderful and helpful seeing this in 3 dimensions, I just want to make it clear for the board that the landscaping on that slope is not, that's still work in progress. That doesn't exactly reflect what's shown on the plan that we've submitted. So the rendering version of that rendered version is not what we're proposing. What we're proposing is made more clear in the site plan documents. And I should say, just as anecdotally, same thing with the landscaping throughout the parking lot. We also responded to that comment. There's more landscaping in the parking lot in plan view than is shown in this rendering. And
That's
it's
right.
just because it takes some time for the artist's renderings to catch up to the site
Right.
plan.
This is just a small glimpse of what we're working on, and hopefully by next meeting we'll have the context that you asked for, so you can clearly see how everything relates to each other or complements. Okay. That's it for tonight.
Well, I appreciate how quickly you've incorporated our comments from last month, including the staircase and the bike racks, and I guess more to come in terms of the landscaping. But yeah, these are really helpful drawings to see it amongst the entire neighborhood.
Yes, thank you for the renderings, and it's exciting to see the staircase and to think about that additional use for access in our community. I think that's wonderful. One thought about the bike racks, it's wonderful, and I think the covered rack is a great addition for specifically for the people that are coming, the shoppers. It is a multi-use area, and I think it's worth considering not only those that shop there, but also those that work there, and that it is a large parking lot, and if there is an auxiliary location that you could have additional bike parking, perhaps for accommodations for employees, that will encourage non-vehicular access and use of the space within our community.
Sure. I think Andy was looking into that in various different places that you could actually add more bicycle parking.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Woodard and Curran had some open items. I don't know if Jennifer or Anthony want to speak to them, or if you feel like you've had sufficient conversation with the applicant.
We have, I mean, based on what Andy said, it's true in that we've been coordinating with them throughout. There's some items on stormwater capacity, which we're working through with the engineers, in addition to some additional utility information. One of them is on the sewer report for sanitary sewers in the area. And the other is to just to get some additional information on water demands based on the change in use versus what we were discussing originally. So those are the main highlights. There's some other more minor items that that we expect to be addressed in the near future. But yeah, we're having constant communication with them, and thus far, I feel like we're on the same page.
Okay, very good.
I'm gonna go up.
One question I had was in the RDCP, there were supposed to be residential units in Block A. Where are those going to be made up?
Well, they've actually already partially been spoken for. In Block I contains more units than those 188 rental apartments are more than what was originally contemplated in the RDCP. And then again, when we did block F, those 236 rental units, those 236, or excuse me, 46 rental units. Again, I believe that's an increase over what was in the RDCP. So what we've done is we've moved the rental units that were originally located on A to those locations.
Okay, so the 123 apartments have been made up in part in blocks I and F. How about the condos?
I don't recall there being condos in Block A. Every block that we've done has varied somewhat from the RDCP, and we can prepare for the next meeting a detailed comparison to show you where things went. But basically, we ended up with 72 townhomes in Block J. I believe the original townhouse layout was somewhat less than that. It was somewhat smaller than that. Similarly, in Block E, my recollection is there were originally 90 units there, and instead we did 46 units, but Block I had more units. Blocks F and G were a mix of condominium and rental, and we ended up doing a rental building there. And Block H is now around, is approved for 97 condo units, and originally that was, I don't recall the number at my fingertips, but it was a smaller number of condos and some townhomes on Block H. So all along the way, we've sort of moved things around to meet where we thought the market was, but recognizing it's in our absolute interest to make sure that there will be 1,177 units developed on this property and not a single unit less. And so, we have an idea on how the rest of the development could go, but there's obviously flexibility depending upon unit sizes and depending upon how each of the blocks configures.
Yeah, okay, well, I think all the more reason why it would be helpful to see whatever you send over next week, as well as to have the kind of recalibration, sit down with the Board of Trustees and all of us. So, okay. So any other updates from the applicant on Block A? Do we have any tenants for the other retail space, or is that still pending?
It's still pending.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can ask, Peter, do you plan to retain that property? Or let me rephrase it. Does DeChico plan to buy the property?
So DeChico's is under contract to purchase the market building, right? So where their store is, and then the next building, the market retail, they'll own half of that, which is where they intend to locate a pharmacy, and we will own the other space there, and we will own the north retail building.
So you will need to come in with a subdivision plan, correct?
Yes.
I'm just going to add, Peter, because we haven't discussed it, it won't be a commercial condominium, it will be a subdivision.
Well, sorry, that's a great point, Mark. We're still discussing.
I just want to mention to Clinton that there's a possibility that we might do it in the form of a commercial condo that would obviate the requirement of a subdivision, but there will necessarily have to be a separation of ownership, just so the record's clear.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Mark.
When do you expect to have clarity on that?
I think that we can, I think by the time we have the next formal meeting with the board, the continuation of this hearing, which I imagine would be in your regular meeting in January, we can commit to having a decision internally on that.
Right, because if we are going to be applying for the subdivision, we should be doing that sooner rather than later.
Right.
Right. Okay. Given that this is a public hearing, are there members of the public on to add their comments?
I don't see anybody.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. All right, so it looks like there's more work to be done, and everyone's expecting to continue this conversation on January 21st, 2021. So unless there's further comments, I would suggest that we adjourn. Everyone good?
Okay.
All right. All right, excellent. So I move to adjourn this public hearing for the Block A site plan until our next meeting, formal meeting on January 21st, 2021. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Was that Ed?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed. Going around, Kirsten,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
All right, so meeting is adjourned, and with that, I do wish you guys a happy holiday, and we'll see you a couple times in January.
Great.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Happy holidays, happy new year.
Everyone.
And we have a new planning board member on Kirsten's lap.
What's
It's
his
not gonna
name?
be awake for long.
Yeah, I go.
He's a little night owl.
Boy, if these meetings don't put him to sleep, he's gonna be up all night.
Yeah, he looks the most wide awake of any of us.
Sorry, Kirsten. No time soon.
All right.
Hey, all, sorry, Marjorie, before we end the meeting, I didn't want to divert any attention there, what going on with Block A, but what, does anybody know what's happening with the jitney service? I just was looking back at some notes from actually over 2 years ago, and I see that they're committed to establish the jitney service by the time the 100th CO is granted. Sean, they must be very close to that, if not already over it, no?
No, they're nowhere near it.
Nowhere, oh, okay, I guess, okay, I was maybe connecting the sales with the,
Oh, no,
COs.
that's COs, right? It's not, they have to have COs. So they got a ways to go, probably another year and a half, maybe.
Oh, that long, okay. All right.
Well,
fair
I
enough.
shouldn't say that because actually Block I is going really fast. And so if that comes online at this time, you know, next year, we might be in good shape.
All right.
Sean,
What got me thinking about it, oh, sorry, David.
No, I was gonna say, Sean, so each of the apartments in Block I is considered a C of O.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I want to get those online.
it's not one building, it's 7.
Yeah, okay. Just
40.
checking.
Yep.
I'm
That's
sorry,
what-
Tom. Go ahead.
No, well, yeah, actually, so how many COs have they had granted so far? Approximately.
9.
Okay. All right. So with the townhomes, they're in blocks or something like that, not individual townhomes.
No, each individual townhome gets a CO.
Oh.
Each condo unit gets a CO. Each apartment gets a CO.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Yeah, it was the parking lot for the DeChicos that got me thinking, presumably the Jitney's going to spend quite a bit of time in there. And now that I know what you were just saying, but they need to consider where is that thing going to pull up and onboard and offboard people. Because I was looking at I don't really see where that's going to happen. Unless it's going to be in the middle of the parking lot, which doesn't sound very good.
No, it's a good thing to start thinking about, though, for sure.
Yeah, Tom, I don't know that a route has been formalized.
Yeah.
Like you're mentioning where you get on, where you get off, where the stops are going to be, but that's something that we should all begin to think about.
Yeah. Well, I was looking to the right of their, where the trucks will come in and the offloading of the trucks. It looks like there's 3 planned parking spots. If I would plunk it right there, but I don't have the image open anymore. But which would be kind of to the left of their entry. Over their entry kind of overhang there. Sorry,
That's
I'm not
actually,
describing it very well.
Yeah, the jitney actually would be a really good thing to bring up to the meeting with the joint meeting with the trustees and Edge to tee that up. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And actually, Aaron, you kind of got me thinking about it too when you were talking about, would the workers be bicycling? And I mean, great idea. Of course, when it's 10 degrees out, they may not want to bicycle, so they might want to take the jitney.
Sure, and it's great that you're bringing it up now, because I think that it would be nice to have design features that make it comfortable to wait. And if you have bags and you have a place to sit and some shade, and to have some infrastructure, green infrastructure that makes it a comfortable place to be as you transition from the retail space to your pickup, your ride.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I just didn't want to divert in the conversation there when I didn't really have enough background to get into it, but now I do. January.
Okay, we also have 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve. The October minutes were updated. Anyone, I assume everyone's provided their comments to Pam already for both October and November. So I move to accept the minutes of October 22nd, 2020. Can I get a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Aaron, second. I'll approve. Ed?
Aye.
Aye. Kirsten, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Lindsay?
I have to abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay. And then I had provided some comments to Pam for the November 19th, 2020 minutes. I move to accept those said minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Tom, second. Ed?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Kirsten?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so both minutes have been approved, and I move to end this meeting.
Second.
Lindsay, second. Kirsten?
Aye.
Aaron? Aye. Tom?
If you forget everybody.
Ed? No, I'm just looking at Kirsten's son, and he's just distracting me. Very cute. Well, anyway, I hope you all have good, safe holidays and see you in 2021. What a year it's been.
That's right.
Same to you all. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep. Good night. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to everyone.
bye-bye.